As you all know, I ran for office and failed, and then ran for school board, but I'm going to keep it up because I know about discrimination. When I was in 8th grade, we moved from Mediapolis, Iowa to Cresco, Iowa. And Mediapolis is well known for their girls basketball, and I got to Cresco and no girls basketball. So I did the petitions, and we had 1,000 signatures. And guess what? The school board said, no girls basketball. So we had no girls sports until after Title IX. Yeah. My younger sister, who's 8 years younger than I am, she's in the Iowa State Athletic Hall of Fame. She's in the Wisconsin University Athletic Hall of Fame. And that was because of discrimination. I didn't have that opportunity. I also was a farmer's wife, and I went to sign up our farm with USDA. And guess what? USDA said, no, you can't sign it up. Doesn't make any difference if your name is on the mortgage. It doesn't make any difference that you farm with your husband. You cannot sign up your farm. Another discrimination. And so I've been fighting discrimination my whole life. As a woman, as a farmer, and I think that Kamala Harris has also had some of those experiences. She was bused. She was in that segregation, desegregation, and was bused. And she faced some of those discrimination. So she has a firsthand experience too. But what I really like is that it's Kamala Harris for the people. It's not for the rich. It's not for Californians. It's for the people. And that's what her message is. And that's why I invited her to my home. So you could hear her message. You could decide. She might not be the loudest. She might not be the most abrasive. But she is a genuine authority.
But I know how to fight.
So we're going to hear what Kamala Harris is going to do for the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann. What a wonderful introduction. And what you know, because this is what you are doing right now and what you do always, and I know that about you, is some of us lead in elected office, and then there are just leaders who are leaders because that's what you do by nature and commitment, and that's who you are. And I am so thankful to you for opening your home on this Sunday, Thanksgiving weekend, on a snowy Sunday morning. But thank you, Ann. If we can please applause. To me. Thank you. And thank you all on this morning. It's just such a wonderful morning to have stayed home. I'm sure, but I appreciate that you're taking the time to be here. So thank you all. It's great to be in Knoxville. So I'm just going to share with you a couple of my thoughts and some of my plans, and then I would love to hear from you and take any questions or hear your thoughts or comments about anything. So I'll just start at the very beginning. We're going to fight. We're going to fight. I think this election presents a number of issues that are very much at stake, and they include the fact that this is a moment where we are, I believe, in a fight for the integrity of our system of democracy, for the integrity of our rule of law, and a fight for the integrity of our system of justice. I do believe all of those things are at stake right now. And so thinking about that then, as one should think about whenever there is a fight, well, the question should be, well, how are we going to win? And I think to win, we have to agree that this is a moment that also presents challenges that are so much bigger than Donald Trump being in. Would you like me to be louder? Okay, knowing that we're in a fight, the question becomes how we're going to win. And the reality is that the fight is so much bigger than Donald Trump. I really do believe that. That this, it's obvious, and we can go on, and I will talk some about what I believe to be, and I think we believe to be his failings, and the damage he has done. But this is also a moment that is not only about turning the page on that, but a moment where we must be prepared to write the next chapter in the history of our country. And doing that in a way that is focused on an investment in the future of our country. And to do that and to win, I don't believe the solution is going to be about talking about how yesterday can cure the challenges of tomorrow. We have to be focused on going forward, on recognizing the potential of our students, the need to make sure that working people have the resources that they need to grow their families, to make sure that in this environment where so many people are being laid off, that we have resources put into their ability to transition to the jobs that must be filled. We have to be focused on the future. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but I believe to win we need to be focused on the future. To win, we've got to realize, and Ann said part of this, that like it or not, there have been some powerful forces over the last few years that have been trying to sow hate and division among us. And they've taken hold to some extent. And so this is a moment where we're going to have to fight against that. You know, those folks that have been trying to get us to point fingers at each other and turn on each other? And one of the best ways to fight against that is to do it with a spirit of knowing in our hearts and our souls that the fact is, within the great diversity of who we are as a country, the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And to win, I believe we need to have someone that is our nominee who can stand on that stage and go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. And I believe I am that candidate. And so, as Ann said, this is about a fight, and it's a fight, as it has been in my entire career, for the people. You know, I am a daughter of fighters. My parents met when they were active in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. My sister and I joke we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full-time marching and shouting for justice. And in fact, among the heroes of that movement, there were lawyers like Thurgood Marshall. And I said, you know, I want to do that work. So I actually decided to go to law school. And when I graduated law school, my mom, who raised me and my sister, she said, okay, Kamala, what are you going to do in your fight for justice? And I said, well, I've decided to become a prosecutor. And the reason is that I know that this is a system that has often done justice and often done injustice, and needs to be reformed. And so I want to go on the inside and be in a place where I can do that work. And I also said, I also want to be in a place where I can be a voice for the most vulnerable and voiceless. So I started my career in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in California, an office that was once led by Earl Warren. And from the first moment I walked into a courtroom, and almost every day thereafter, I walked into that courtroom and I spoke 5 words. Kamala Harris, for the people. And that phrase, for the people, I think really captures the spirit of our system of justice in 2 important ways. One, we have rightly said that a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. And therefore, no one should be made to fight alone. Second, for the people, to Ann's point, means all the people. Regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of where they live geographically, regardless of the party with which they're registered to vote, regardless of the language your grandmother speaks. All the people. And so it has been in the name of the people that for years at the beginning of my career, I prosecuted cases involving crimes against women and children, saying that they deserve a voice that gives them strength and dignity and justice without judgment. For the people, when I was elected the district attorney of San Francisco, meant saying that it was a failed war on drugs that led to America's problem of mass incarceration. And so I created one of the first in the nation programs focused on giving jobs to people who were arrested for drugs. For the people, when I was elected Attorney General of California, where I served for 2 terms, running the 2nd largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice, meant taking on the biggest banks of America who had been engaged in predatory lending practices, which resulted in so many homeowners in our country losing their homes from foreclosure. It meant taking on the pharmaceutical companies, taking on the big oil companies, and winning. For the people, since I've been in the United States Senate now almost 3 years, has meant taking on Jeff Sessions and William Barr and Brett Kavanaugh. And for the people then, I stand before you, fully prepared to defeat Donald Trump. And so that's why I'm running. And I do believe justice is on the ballot. When in America, in any place you can imagine, there is a dad who tonight will be sitting at his kitchen counter, trying to figure out how he's going to get through the end of the month. Because even though he's working 2 jobs, he's paying more taxes than the 400 richest families in America. Economic justice is on the ballot. I'm running for president to say that for too long the rules have been written in a way that have not supported working families in America. So, in particular, we're going to change the tax code so that for families that make less than $100,000 a year, they'll receive a tax credit of up to $6,000 a year that they can take home at up to $500 a month. People say, how are you going to pay for it? Well, that's really simple. On day one, we're going to repeal that tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America. For the people means thinking about that mom who has a child who has a fever that's out of control. She calls 911 and they say, well, take the child to the emergency room. So she drives to the hospital. She's pausing, looking at those sliding glass doors, because she knows that even though she's got insurance, if she walks through those sliding glass doors, she's going to be out of pocket a $1,000 to a $4,000 deductible. Healthcare justice is on the ballot. So I'm running for president to say it should be, especially in this year of our Lord 2019, a no-brainer that everyone in our nation should have access to health care, and it should not be a function of how much money they've got in their back pocket. So I've got a Medicare for All plan, but my plan's a little different from some of my friends on the debate stage. So on the one hand, you've got a couple of folks who've got a plan, but it, by their own admission, will not cover about 10 million people. My plan will cover everyone, including people with pre-existing conditions, and I'm going to also extend benefits so that it covers vision and dental and hearing aids. But the difference between my plan and some of the folks who aren't going to cover the 10 million people is just that. Mine will cover everybody. And 10 million people, to put that in context, that's about 10 times the size of Delaware. It's about 100 times the size of South Bend. So that's a lot of people. On the other hand, my plan is different from some of the folks who are trying to get rid of private insurance, because I'm not trying to do that. When I was traveling Iowa and around the country, too many people said to me, Kamala, I want everyone to have access to health care, but don't take away my choice. Don't take away my choice between having a private plan or a public plan. So my Medicare for All plan will not take away your choice. You will have the choice between a private plan or a public plan. But let me be clear, we're going to bring the insurance companies in and hold them responsible for what they've been doing, jacking up prices for so many years. And under my plan, they cannot charge copays or deductibles, and they're going to have to play by our rules or they don't play at all. In America, we have teachers, and here in Iowa, who are working 2 and 3 jobs to get through the end of the month. 94% of our public school teachers are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. Teachers on average are making 11% less than similarly educated professionals. And let's be clear, there are 2 groups of people raising our children. Parents, often with the assistance of grandparents and aunties and uncles, and our teachers, and we are not paying them their value. So I'm running for president to say that we're going to put in place the first in our nation's history federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which here in Iowa is $12,200 a year. $12,200 a year, that's a year's worth of mortgage payments.
or a year's worth of grocery bills, or putting a significant dent in student loan debt, which is one of the biggest reasons our students don't come out and join a profession for which they have a passion. And I'm here to also say to Betsy DeVos, in case she's listening, teachers don't need a gun, they need a raise. And speaking of our children, you know, I'll tell you, I grew up in a community where the children of the community were considered the children of the community. So I say, when in America, our babies, elementary, middle, and high school students have to go to school to endure a drill during which they're taught about how to hide in a closet in the event there's a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school, justice for our children is on the ballot. So, I'm running for president to say, look, leaders have to have the courage to lead on this. And it's a false choice to say you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. I'm in favor of the Second Amendment. But I also know, having looked at more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you, having embraced more mothers of homicide victims than I care to tell you, that we need reasonable gun safety laws in our country, including universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapons ban. And some people have said, well, and some people on the debate stage disagree. They say, well, Kamala Harris is saying if there's no action by Congress, she'll take executive action. Yeah, you're right, I did, and I am. And they say, well, but that's going to be a problem because then what if, you know, somebody comes in office and a Republican comes in office later and changes it? Well, you know what? I'll deal with that in 8 years. We need action. We need action. When in America we have families that are silently suffering from depression, from substance abuse, from suicidal thoughts, it is time to take action and agree that mental health care is on the ballot and we must act. And I'm running for president to say, having done this work for a very long time, no one in our country should be made to silently suffer. And we need to bring this issue out of the shadows and give people the resources they deserve, understanding that health care doesn't mean just from the neck down. It also includes the neck up, and we have got to treat what is paining and causing people in our country to silently suffer needlessly. And I could go on and on about a number of things, but I do believe justice is on the ballot. And justice is on the ballot when we have a criminal living in the White House. And I'm really clear about this. In America, in our system of justice, no one is above the law, including the President of the United States. So I'll tell you that I do believe that on all of these and so many more issues, that the bottom line is this. When we address and overcome these various injustices, I do believe it is at that moment that we have the ability to unlock the promise of America and the potential of the American people. I really do believe that. And that's the America I see. That's the America I believe in. That's why I'm running. I do believe, and I know, and this is true in particular for the people of Iowa, we have the ability to see what has never been before and to fight to make it possible. One of the things I love about spending time in Iowa is that Iowans know that you never should sit back and wait for somebody's permission to tell you what's possible. You gotta see it, and then you gotta just go for it, right? Not waiting to tell and waiting for someone to tell you, oh, we've seen that before, therefore it can be done. No, we fight for those things, knowing what is possible and going there. And that, I think, is what is required of us right now in fighting for the future of our country. And the bottom line is that there is so much at stake, but there also is so much to be optimistic about in terms of who we are and what we are capable of doing and being. And then that is what motivates me to run. And I do believe it will be that spirit and approach that brings us to the point of actually winning this campaign. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate you. I really do. And I'll take questions.
Yes, and so thank you so much, Senator Harris. But now she is willing to take questions. Yes. So, okay. Sherry?
Yes, my name is Sherry, and I'm her vice chair. And there's a humanitarian crisis at the border. And there's several things that I have like a 3-point question for you. What would you do in the immediate term? What would you do in the middle term? And what would you do in the long term to both solve the immediate problem, the middle term problem, and then the long term problem with immigration?
Yeah. So, justice for immigrants is on the ballot. And when we have had policies that have been about putting babies in cages and separating children from their parents in the name of border security, when in fact what it is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government, we know that we can do better. And, you know, listen, let's also agree, immigrants have helped make America what it is. And, you know, let's just talk turkey here. But okay. Unless you're Native American or your ancestors were kidnapped and brought over on a slave ship, your people are immigrants. So, you know, and by the way, somebody needs to remind Donald Trump that some of his closest relatives are immigrants too. Exactly. So on this issue, I start with just a statement of what should be our values on the issue of immigration. And that the horrible disservice of the current president on this issue has caused whole communities of people to live in fear. The number of children that did not want to go to school after he was elected for fear that when they came home after school, their parents would have been deported. The number of pediatricians who reported that there were canceled appointments because those families didn't want to have interaction with the system. We need to pass comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway towards citizenship. And here's the thing about it. There's bipartisan support for this. One of the great leaders on this was the late, great John McCain. Lindsey Graham has been a leader on this, as it turns out, right? So part of it is we need a new president who will make it clear that she is prepared to sign legislation that will implement comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway towards citizenship. In the short term, to the point of your question, we need to reinstate, and I will do that by executive order, DACA protections for those dreamers. I mean, you know, step back for a moment. So we said to these young people, many of whom came to the country before they could walk or talk, if you give us information about the circumstances of your arrival, if you prove to us that you are living a productive life, not committing any crimes, then we will defer deportation. We won't deport you. That was what DACA was. And we said, if you give us this information about yourself, we will not share this information with ICE. This president came in and broke America's promise to these kids. who are living in fear right now, and the only thing stopping them from being deported is that there was a court order saying you can't. So I would reinstate DACA immediately, and then mid and long term, it's about passing comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway towards citizenship, and also speaking about this issue in a way that we recognize not only America's history, but that there will be great economic benefit for what we do when we pass comprehensive immigration reform. There will also be, we will be in an environment where we are making a statement about who and what we are in terms of our values that include not putting babies in cages. On day one, I'll shut down those private detention centers. After the first debate in the presidential race, it was in Miami. Since I was in Florida anyway, I drove down to a place called Homestead, Florida. In Homestead, Florida, there is a private detention facility that your taxpayer dollars are paying for. A private detention facility that currently, but at least then, did house 2,700 children. And let's be clear, this private detention facility, the business model, is that certain human beings are making a bunch of money off of the incarceration of other human beings called children.
And others.
And others, right. So immediately, going to shut those down. But there's going to be a lot of work to be done. But who is president of the United States is going to make a big difference on this issue. Thank you.
You talked about justice being on the ballot. I agree with that. What are you going to do to reform the justice system so many people aren't incarcerated that really don't belong there?
That's right. That's right. So a number of things. And, you know, I know this system from the inside. And it's part of why I became a prosecutor, as I said earlier. So there are a number of things we need to do. One, that war on drugs that I was talking about earlier. We ended up criminalizing whole populations of people for what was a public health issue. Drug addiction is a health issue. And we need to treat it as such. It's a disease that needs to be treated, not in jails and prisons, but through a public health system. So that's one of the things we need to do. I am a proponent of legalizing marijuana. And by the way, also a proponent of saying, you know what? And all those people who were arrested and are now felons for life, and now we're looking at many states, including my home state, that has legalized marijuana, and it's now one of the biggest cash cow industries in America, that those folks who had been incarcerated and then now they're felons for life, they can't get jobs. Let's expunge their records and make them and put them first in line to get the jobs in this new industry. Because guess what? The only difference, actually there's no difference. The people who are making a whole lot of money, what are they doing? Selling weed. Before this happened, what were those folks doing? Selling weed. I mean, you know, if you look at like when people, you know, when you're looking for a job, experience needed, they've got experience. What are we going to do with our criminal justice system? We also have to, I mean, one of my big areas of focus is also incarcerated women. We have states in America that are shackling women during childbirth. Profit in the criminal justice system? Outrageous. So if you've ever visited anyone who's incarcerated, you'll know, or if you've ever tried to talk to them on the phone, they're charged like $1 a minute for a phone call. Video conferencing is even more expensive. So when we're looking at, I'll use as an example, incarcerated women, most of them are moms. Most of them are not in for life. The vast majority of them love their children. And everything about how the system is set up works against them bonding with their children and eventually reunifying with their children. And a lot of it has to do with how we place women so far away from their families and men, making it so difficult for people to travel to where their incarcerated relative may be. We make it difficult for them to make phone calls because it's too expensive. Not to mention the money in the criminal justice system around bail. I've been a leader in the United States Senate saying we need to get rid of the money bail system. Why? Well, because there are certain people who are sitting in jail for days, weeks, months, even years waiting to go to trial simply because they cannot afford the money to pay bail. Meanwhile, the people who have money are out. That is on its face unfair. And that's not only a criminal justice issue, it's an economic justice issue. So I've been working to get rid of the money bail system. But there is so much about the system that, and then we talked about the for-profit detention facilities. Well, that includes for-profit prisons, which we need to shut down. Again, profit motive. So the motivation there is not to run programs that are about helping people get out early, meaning helping them get back on their feet. You're making money by having people in your jail. So those are some of the ways that I think about what we need to do to reform the system. Thank you. Thank you. Louise?
This is actually one question, but it points into two very different issues. And I'm not going to pretend that I have researched this thoroughly, so I hope this news report was accurate. But over the weekend, I read that in addition to the wall that Mr. Trump is trying to build with our tax dollars, there is a private corporation building a separate wall in a floodplain that our law will not permit, but somehow that's happening in our system. So the question is twofold. What will you do to ensure a more sustainable future in America? And how will you deal with this, what I suspect is maybe an illegal effort by a private corporation to support Trump's effort to build a wall across the southern border?
So let's start with the fact that this is probably one of the most corrupt administrations we've seen in a very long time. They're corrupt. You know, you look at that cabinet, it's a cabinet of special interests. For the most part, everyone there never was dedicated to public service. I've only had one client my entire career, and that's been the people. I have never worked for a corporation. I have never worked for a special interest. And when I look at that cabinet and the responsibility they have to do work in the public trust for the public good, and the number of them that are clearly there for not public service but self-service, many of whom came from the private sector and after this quick stint are going to go back to the private sector, which they have helped profit even more by deregulating entire industries while they've been supposedly leaders in our government. And so when you talk about your concern, I don't know the details of what you shared, but when you talk about your concern just across the board, I know it to be a real serious concern, which is how members of this administration, including this president, have been motivated by profit versus what is in the public interest and for the public good. You look at someone like Betsy DeVos, you know, she's become a good kind of like laugh line, but let's be clear about this. Her whole family and their whole business model is about trying to privatize education. You look at the way that they've been selling off public lands, this administration, for drilling. You could just go down the list, and so your concern is a legitimate one. On that wall, look, that wall is never getting built, and Mexico is certainly not paying for it, right? And it's just another one of those examples of, but I don't doubt that there would be private contractors who are benefiting. I mean, I know that there were some reports about, for example, the previous chief of staff to the president who was involved with some of the private and for-profit prisons, you know, and so I'm not surprised about that. And, it doesn't get a lot of attention in the news, but this issue of the public trust is so important. Is so important. You know, you and I know, you hold these positions not for your personal power. You hold these positions to benefit the public. There's a very sacred trust associated with these jobs, or should be. And this administration across the board has violated that trust. Across the board. So we're going to throw the bums out.
Okay, so this is our last question. Matt, do you have a question for her?
Yes, thank you for being back in Marion County. You were with me at farm in August. And how are you going to help farms like ours and Marion County farmers, Iowa farmers, American farmers lead on climate action?
Yes, great, thank you. Thank you. That's such a, and I actually just did an interview earlier about this. First of all, I really enjoyed our last visit, and it's actually part of my climate action plan. Farmers are explicitly in my plan. As I was saying during this interview, that one of the things I love about farmers, and by the way, background. My state, California, we have a huge agricultural industry. So you might think, oh, California, what is that? It's Hollywood. No, I have worked for years with farmers. And one of the things I love about farmers is that by your very nature, you are so innovative. Because you don't have the luxury of just like sitting back and, oh, this, whatever, and having opinions. You got to get stuff done and you got to adapt. You got to adapt to whatever nature presents you, and in that way, you also are so close to it that you know more than most what is happening in terms of how the climate is changing. And so I look very forward to partnering with farmers in our plan for what we need to do as a country in doing a better job of sustaining this planet. And that's about things like cover crops, which we've talked about. It's about looking at investing in the land-grant universities around what we can do to partner there around developing innovations, biofuels, things of that nature. And there's such great promise there. And frankly, anybody who is in a position of leading opinion on this should, and I certainly am excited about, bringing farmers in to be part of the leadership at the table as we are not only implementing, but first designing how we deal with these issues. And then there's also just the issue of respecting our farmers in terms of trade policy. And what we've seen there, again, under this administration has been horrendous. And, everything from what we've seen around farmers in Iowa and around the country looking at bankruptcy, dairy farmers in Wisconsin, it's just, it's been talk about a violation of trust there too, and that needs to be fixed. So thank you. Thank you for that question. Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming on this winter day out in, somebody said that I live back in the 1950s when you take a look on gravel roads and farm. So we are so happy to have you here today, and thank you so much for your time.
Please caucus with us in Kamala's corner.
Okay. You are all welcome to stay. We have more coffee, we have more pastries, and talk about it and talk to all the organizers. And if you want to caucus, I'm sure they will be glad to take your names.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. Because it's like anybody who's like older than 20, 25 has never had it. We never had to have it. The fact that you guys sit in class and half of your brain is aware that somebody could come busting in. It's not normal. That's the reality. It should not be normal.
Kamala, can you convince these kids on why they need to knock doors for you? They're really great door knockers.
Yes. Oh, great. Well, I would hope to have and earn your support. And knocking on doors, it's about, listen, it's why I say so much about this election has to be about the future. There is so much at stake right now that you guys are going to pay for if we don't get it right. So one of my big issues is what we need to do around the climate crisis, which in the next 12 years, and some say we have even a shorter amount of time to fix what's wrong, or it will be irreversible, right? And this is literally about clean air and clean water. It's about preserving natural land, right? I've
actually done the work. You know, there are a lot of subjects that we can discuss and people can, you know, give a lovely speech about. I've actually done the work. So back when I was district attorney in the dark ages, in 2003 I was elected. What year were you born?
2004.
That's my point. Exactly. Before you were born!
Yeah.
I created an environmental justice unit in my office focused on what was happening around poor communities being dumping grounds for chemicals and for pollution. And said, you know, that's wrong. We need to go after the polluters. They should stop taking advantage of poor communities. When I was Attorney General of California, I defended some of the toughest laws that were about saying that we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and that the big polluters, meaning the oil companies, that they need to pay a penalty for this because this has not naturally occurred. The harm to our environment, it's not like it just naturally evolved into this. It's because of pollution. And there are some people who've made a lot of money polluting. Like, have you ever heard about like big tobacco and what they did for years? They knew what they were doing was harmful. They did the research, but they did it anyway because they were making so much money. A lot of the issue that I have with the big oil companies is they also knew what they were doing and how it was harming our planet, and we need to go after them. So that's one big area of focus for me, okay? One of my big areas of focus is public education. I want that you guys are going to have a school where when you go, all that you want to do to open up your mind to the wonders of math and art and science, that you're going to have the resources in those schools. Student loan debt, it's a huge issue. You're going to see if you guys go to college. It's a big issue here in Iowa. It's a big issue. So I'm saying we should have free community college, debt-free college, and also interest-free loans, because what ends up happening is you'll end up taking out a loan and then you have to pay interest on it. So you end up owing more than you actually took out in the loan. So I'm saying no, because I want to invest in the future of our country so we can be strong. And that's about investing in you guys, right? And some people talk about, oh, you know, they're going to blow up the system, they're going to start a revolution. That's not going to deal with what we need to deal with tomorrow. So that's part of how I think about things. So I would love to have your help, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. But I'm really glad you guys are here. That means a lot to me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay, lecture over.
I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I want to welcome you to Iowa.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
And we love it. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I had a question for you, but I didn't want to be pushy. And the nice lady here answered it. She asked you. Okay. I am livid about those children who are being held in cages. I'm a teacher. I was a teacher.
Well, you still are. Teachers don't retire.
And so I am just livid. And I think he should be prosecuted, President Trump, for kidnapping. There's several that have died.
I know.
And now the news is they don't talk about it.
And they've been assaulted. There's so many that have been assaulted while they're in custody.
I knew when there were 6 that died, and it just made my stomach turn. We need people like you to turn this around. And do you think, Jeannie, that when we finally get to those children, if ever, how can we reunite them with their parents?
We have to, and so part of it is that we have to hold them accountable to track where the kids are being placed, but they need to be reunified. But the piece also that we need to deal with, the trauma to these kids.
They'll never get over it.
I know.
I work with special children.
I know.
They never get over it.
I know that. It is, to your point, a crime.
It is.
It is a crime what we're
and
doing.
we need him prosecuted. We need him prosecuted.
Well, we need to let's just get those babies out of those cages.
That's the main
Let's
thing.
get those babies out of those
Let's get
cages.
them out.
Yeah, that's my focus.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And we'll spread the word.
Please, that'd be very helpful. I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeannie would like you to.
Hi. How you doing? It's good to see you.
Yes, I wanted to see you in Indianola this morning, but
It was early.
It was snowing.
It was snowing and it was early.
Yes, the early didn't bother me. I got up early, and then I'm not good in the snow.
Yeah.
So when I heard there was one here, I thought, okay, it'll stop snowing, and then I'll come see you. So here I am.
Thank you.
I'm very glad to see you. Yes.
I really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was good. I was really happy to see so many people turning out.
Oh yeah, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. I love the small venues.
It's, because also people feel, it just feels
easier to have a conversation.
Right.
Right? Where you can talk about what you're really feeling and not feel like you gotta watch yourself, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I always, the questions are always great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm your precinct leader in Ames, Iowa. I go to Iowa State. Yeah.
What are you studying?
Political science.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Are you taking any coding classes?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Empirical
That's really
research.
important.
Yes. Data analytics. I'm struggling, but
Just to know how it works, right?
yeah, it's
How's
hard.
it going?
Good. I'm ready for the semester to be over though. 2 more weeks.
Two more weeks.
Yes.
There we go. Are you in finals?
Yes. Yep. And I'm working in the Iowa House next session, so I'll be there for a Democrat. So I'm super excited. But I'm committed to caucus for you. I'm a precinct leader.
You.
So.
Oh, I can't do it without you. That really makes a difference.
Can you turn the phone
on?
Yeah. I would love to get a picture with you.
Come here, but you know, why don't you stand there and then the light is shining this way. There you go. I'm choreographing.
You're very good at it.
Yeah, she's awesome. Oh, sorry, that was my mom.
Hi! There we go.
Thank you. That means a lot for your time. Thank you.
We're gonna have to go now.
She's amazing.
She is, isn't she? Thank you. Yeah, but she's going to work in the state capitol this fall semester, so I'm very proud of her.
Yeah.
Good. She brought me with her, so I'm glad she did.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Who are you clerking
Thank
for?
you. I'll see you soon.
I've got to tell you.
Yes.
I'm sorry about being late. I got
okay.
stuck on a B road. It took me forever to find this road.
Right.
It's Marion County. I left Oskaloosa at 10.
Oh my goodness.
And so, yeah.
Thank
Anyway.
you for making such a big effort to be here. That means a lot to me.
Well,
thank you.
You're just great.
Thank you.
And I love your leadership on judiciary.
Thank you.
And keep that up. Those judges are
you're right.
horrible.
No, you hit all the subjects. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Thank you. And thank you for making such a big effort to be here. That means a lot to me.
Hi. Can I have a hug?
Yes.
I'm Alex. Hi. I'm so glad to meet you.
How are you doing?
Can you take a picture of us? I'm with Moms Demand Action.
Oh, you guys are doing. You guys are doing such.
Yes, and I wanted to invite you to a pancake breakfast next Saturday in Des Moines.
Oh yeah.
I know. Yeah. So I'll give the information to your guys. Yes.
I don't know. I think I'm here. I don't know.
I know. But thank you for everything, and I really enjoyed listening to your talk.
If you tell Mike, we can pass along the
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for your question and your point. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a serious issue. But I also wanted to say thank you for your commitment to public education and to the students that we all care so much about.
I mean, we have to, and listen, that's one of the biggest things. We've got to fix our public education system. We are failing our children across the board.
Well,
we are failing.
Yeah, it's so hard to figure out where to focus. We're all in a headspin all the time under this administration because normally education would be my #1 top issue, but how can we not care about the environment? How can we not care about the future of our democracy?
We can multitask, right? We have to. And we do know how to do that. We do know how to do that. Right?
Well, thank you for touching on all of those issues and bringing them all together under that umbrella of justice. I love that.
Right.
So,
because these things are injustices, right?
You're probably at 12:18:49. I got it. Don't worry.
Here, come over here, Barb. The lights are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks for making the effort to be here.
Well, we wouldn't have missed it. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Senator.
Nice to see you.
I tell you, your speech when you announced you were running really inspired me a great deal.
Thank you.
It was really a great moment to listen to that speech. I was in my car on the radio.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I just want to encourage your message of unity, I think, is really important right now.
I agree with you.
So thank you for that.
I agree with you, and I feel very strongly about that. I feel very strongly.
We've got to find a way to bring everybody together.
We do, and we have to heal. I mean, we have so many big challenges as a nation, regardless of if he was in office or not.
Right.
And we need to be prepared to meet those challenges. And one of the best ways to do it is to unify around the commonalities.
Right.
We all want the same thing for our children. We all want the same thing for our communities. And so we should just if we think think that way, we can actually make it so.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think we're looking for that
Yeah.
leadership from you. So
Yeah.
that's
And
exciting.
I've lived in many places, I know many cultures, and I know what I'm saying to be true, that we have more in common than what separates us. And we need, and I have a long-standing commitment to coalition building and bringing people together.
Good.
So,
We'll be looking for that.
Thank you.
In your presidency,
thank
for
you.
sure.
Thank you for the support.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Hi, I'm Katie.
You are. You're the Katie.
Yes, I am. I got this shirt from one of the ladies. She makes some in there. Yes. So I'm actually from Illinois. I came over this morning to meet you. I'm going to be doing precinct captain in Springfield.
Thank you.
So I'm really
What's
looking
your
forward
name?
to that. Katie.
Katie
Yes.
and Kamala. Yes, K. We're all K.
Yes.
Hi.
It's a good one.
Thank
It's a
you,
good name,
Katie.
so-
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been talking to all my family about you and getting as much enthusiasm as
Thank
I can.
you.
I know, March is coming up pretty quick.
I know, that's true. That's a good point. See, so you're laying the groundwork.
I am trying, yeah.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you.
Well, it's really good to meet you. I brought my book too, so
Okay, I'll sign it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm not
good,
here
good,
to
good,
visit.
good. Oh, good.
I really enjoyed coming and
Thank
seeing
you,
you today.
Katie, and all the effort you're putting into this. This really makes such a difference.
Thanks.
It truly makes a big difference. Thank you.
Working hard for you. I need to see you in the White House.
We're gonna get this done. We just gotta fight. We gotta just, it will not be given to us.
I think you're the person that's gonna. We need to heal and bring everybody together and bring back what's really, really good about people.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's what I say all the time. Like, we have to lift people up. Like, the real sign of power is not based on who you beat down, it's who you lift up.
I love that.
Right?
Well, thank you.
Oh, Katie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course. Thank you, thank you.
Hi. Hi. Can I start with a hug?
Yes, of course. Here we go. How you doing?
I've been following you since the Senate campaigns, and I just love how you can be such a fighter but still be optimistic, because I feel like that's
We have to let those things coexist, right? Because remember, we are fighting for something. So that's our optimism, not against something. We're fighting for something.
Yep.
Right?
And I also follow Mina on Twitter, so I love your cooking advice.
Oh my God, I know, she's so funny.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Like the ripping the cabbage and the things.
I was like, there's different kinds of brine. What?
Yeah, brine.
Oh yeah, like
I learned a lot.
Cooking with Kamala.
Yes, I know. It is. It's actually
It's a
turned
whole
into a
thing.
thing. I mean, I love to cook. I really love to cook. So it's been, it's fun to share with you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we get a picture?
Yes, come on. Come over here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thanks.
We've known each other since kindergarten, so it's fun to get a see you together.
You know what? I am still best friends with my best friend from kindergarten.
It's the best.
It really is. I mean, it's like traveling a whole life together. And we've been in different cities and over the years, but still, one of my closest friends is my best friend from kindergarten.
Yeah,
The best.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you guys. That's very special.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for bringing immigration up. It's one of my highest priorities.
Oh, good. And actually, part of the question was, what would you do to ease the backlog at the border?
Well, a number of things, and including we actually need to put more judges to process those cases, and I think they've deliberately made them slow so that it discourages people from actually going through the process.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah, because I know some families are waiting at the border for like weeks at a time.
Yeah, well, but also the policy has been to leave them in dangerous areas instead of,
I know that there are aid workers on the other side of the border just doing all they can to feed the people.
Yeah, and people have been going to volunteer down there to make it easier for them. No, it's really horrendous.
It's really horrendous.
Yeah. Thank you for your advocacy.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah. It is very important.
And, but, it's one of those issues where we're talking about some of the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And the way to remember it, and I talk about it often, is let's be really clear. If a parent pays a coyote who is a perfect stranger to transport their child outside of the country of origin through an entire foreign country, Mexico, to come here facing unknown peril,
Why would a parent do that?
Right.
It is because if they stay where they are, it's even worse.
Right.
But then what does this administration do? When they arrive, they say, go back to where you came from.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts
It's
on...
inhumane.
What are your thoughts on funding the triangle so that they're...
We have to.
Yeah.
But that's part of the issue, is that, and this is part of what Trump just does not understand. Our strength around the world, in large part, has not been derived just from the strength of our military, but the strength of our commitment to diplomacy, including investing humanitarian aid in places that need it, and also encouraging their democracies. And when you look at the Northern Triangle, we have abandoned the humanitarian aid. We've abandoned it, and there is some overlap between what we're seeing in terms of the droves, and because we're not supporting the work that's happening there to promote a democracy and to promote humanitarian policies. Yeah, it's a big part of it. You're right. You're right. Hi.
Good to see you.
How have you been? I know, I remember
good to
you.
see you
Hi,
again.
hi. That's where
Glad
it was.
to see
Stay
you
fried.
again. Yes,
Good
yes.
to see you again.
Got a question for
Yes.
you. Give me some talking points to say to my 89-year-old retired teacher, middle-class mom, AKA.
Well, public education is one of my highest priorities. Let her know that my first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, attended my law school graduation.
Very good, yes.
And almost everything that I feel about public education has been also a function of my personal experiences, which is that I know the significance of our teachers. I know the significance of having a robust environment in a classroom that includes having a teacher, teacher's aides, having a nurse in the school, having a social worker in the school. And that's why my policies include all of those things. Because I'm very clear that in addition to the family that raised me, it is that environment that allows me to then be a candidate for president. And so public education is one of my highest areas of focus, and so that's both around what we need to do around salaries, what we need to do to fund school districts, what we need to do to resource classrooms, what we need to do to allow our children to be safe in those classrooms. So let her know all that.
I will do that.
Thank you.
I will do that.
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Excuse me. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Our daughter's from San Francisco, so she wants a picture.
I'll come right here. We'll grab a picture with you guys after this.
Thank you. Give your mom my letter. Thank you. As a soror.
I will. My daughter in San Francisco was very jealous that we actually got to meet you today.
How's she doing? What's she doing in San Francisco?
She's good. She works in interior design.
Nice.
They went to, her husband works for Apple.
Okay.
She said otherwise they would not be able to afford to live there.
That's for sure. Oh, here, I'm taking a photo.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Thanks for coming. It's so
Thank you
nice
for being
to
here.
meet you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
With a split Congress and not being able to address health care and all, the centrists, independents are asking about.
It's part of it, but we need to focus on the Senate in addition to the White House. There's no question. To actually get legislation pushed through. There's no question about that.
People keep wanting to know about the deficit. They want to know about the things that can get done, things the Democrats are.
Yeah, well, we need to, we also just need to kind of coalesce around these things that are nonpartisan. There's so many of these issues that truly at their core, and certainly in the way that people experience the issue, it's not partisan. Not even bipartisan, it's nonpartisan.
That's true.
So, and that we need leaders who understand and recognize that and then are working on these issues from a perspective that is about just fixing problems. And this is part of why I'm running. People don't really want to have a long debate or any debate about, the virtues of capitalism versus socialism. They want things fixed. They want health care without worrying about how they can afford it. They want to be able to pay their rent. I have a whole initiative that's about affordable rent. They want to be able to have their kids go to a school where there's a nurse and there's a social worker.
How much of it can get done unilaterally, though?
Well, Well, some of it can, but some of it is going to take, and listen, I mean, I've held leadership roles in local government, state government, and federal government, and you have to roll up your sleeves and build coalitions. There's no question.
We're so divided here. Marion County is 70% Republican.
Yeah, wow.
And it used to be, in '64, it was 70% Democrat.
Yeah.
So it's really trying to get back to the values that are there.
Right, the core values.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to be here today.
No,
thank you.
Can I get a picture with you, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I want to share a little story if I can.
Of course.
My niece has cancer, and when she was first being treated for it, she said, "I'm getting wonderful care. I have wonderful insurance. Don't worry about me."
Yeah.
Now, after about a year of treatment, she's saying, "I'm getting wonderful care. Don't worry about me," but the bills have started coming in.
Yeah.
And her insurance company is saying, "Well, the doctors gave you the wrong $40,000 chemotherapy drug. We can't pay for that." I don't care how that gets fixed, whether it's your plan or any of the plans of the other people on the stage, but it's got to be fixed.
I agree with you. And that's why we have to take the insurance companies out of the business of dictating what doctors can treat and cannot treat. They cannot, and this is why we have a Medicare for All plan, right? So that we have, and everyone has options, and those insurance companies that are not providing full coverage for someone who is a cancer patient. How old is she?
She's about 40.
Yeah, but not providing full coverage, you know, they should go out of business, frankly. If they're not providing full coverage to someone who is trying to go through chemotherapy who has cancer. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, we all think she's going to recover. We're all very hopeful, but we're also concerned, and we want her fighting for her health, not for her economic survival.
That's right. And that's why we need to reform the system. And that story is exactly, that's why I talk about it that way, which is that mom has insurance. But the deductible, what is covered, is not affordable. It's simply not affordable.
Well, thank you for coming here. Very glad to have met you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. And give your niece my best.
I will.
Yeah. Tell her her fighting spirit is going to make a difference.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
Talk to Ian. Do you send me an email? You and Ian.
Fox is trying to do it.